Hello everybody, welcome to the Gyrocopter Flying Club. Don't forget to sign up to the Gyrocopter Accident Seminar on July 11th, as I think it will be very interesting for the majority of pilots. The link to how to get involved is in the description. In this film we're going to look at the use of the radio and how it provides not only an extra layer of safety, but provides most pilots with additional freedom. This isn't a film to teach you radio telephony, but it's to highlight that it's important. Everybody who's ever learnt to fly has gone through the same pain that perhaps you are, but it's also very worthwhile becoming proficient. Most pilots will recognise a typical pattern where you spend quite a lot of time learning how to fly stick and rudder style, but often the student is left to his own devices radio-wise. Yes, he picks things up being in the company of his instructor, but the formality of the radio license is separate to the flying course, and because it's not as fun, it's often kicked into the long grass. Very often it's not helped because gyroplane flight training is done at airfields that are not controlled, and so much of your flying has been without the need to even use a radio. Student pilot then becomes a qualified pilot, and sadly his ability on the radio is suboptimal, and it becomes limiting. He becomes afraid of flying on certain trips because it may involve talking to a particular service, and not being very good at it, he just avoids things altogether. But the real snag is when the use of the radio might be forced upon our subject. The mental capacity to actually listen, interpret and respond is very often overwhelming. The soaking of mental capacity is a big problem during those early student solos. Indeed, the recent accident to November 316 Mike Golf would seem that a lack of the use of radio was certainly contributory to the accident. Here the student recognised he had an engine warning light whilst downwind, but failed to communicate the issue. Aviate, navigate, communicate always applies, and perhaps that explains the absence of communication from the pilot. But that absence nevertheless must not be through lack of competence in using the radio. As it happens, the airfield tower was closed, and it's unclear if the instructor was using a handheld radio. If he wasn't, that's questionable enough, but it's usual for instructors to take a handheld radio to monitor student solos. After November 316, Mike Golf took almost 1.2 kilometers to perform a touch and go landing before aborting and landing ahead. Quite why the instructor didn't inquire over his students' well-being on the radio, one can only guess. There are a number of radio-focused YouTube films to help you get involved. This one from Mile High Flight Academy, and happily the solution is quite simple because learning the phraseology and the techniques of using the radio can all be done at home. It really just requires some application, and once learned, it's a skill that just by doing it keeps it all in shape. But the real message is that it's absolutely worthwhile learning to be proficient on the radio and before doing the first solo, because the more effort you give to learning and the commitment to stay on top of the radio, it will free up mental capacity for other, perhaps more important items. And even if you never need that capacity for emergency purposes, it'll allow you to explore more places once you've got your license and makes flying a lot more relaxing an experience. Learning to fly is not just about good stick and rudder skills, and much of the work needed to be done around flight planning, the use of the radio and other points of airmanship can be done at home. It's not all spoon-fed, and in the long term you'll be a much better pilot if it isn't. Fly safely.